We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As most of you know, our original plan for tonight and our hope for tonight was that we would be here to quickly set a tax rate to get tax bills out. But as the override failed to pass, that is not what we will be doing. We still, in essence, will be discussing the tax rate today because we'll be discussing the reason why we won't be setting a tax rate and the effect that the failure on the override will have both on the tax rate and on the town in general. So before I begin, before we get into that, I would just like to welcome and congratulate our two new Board of Selectmen members, John Columbus and Diane Haley Brooks. And just for the record, John, were you sworn in today?
Yes, I was.
By the town clerk, and Diane, were you sworn in today?
Yes, I was.
Okay, thank you. So let the record reflect that. Welcome. Obviously, this is not the particularly pleasant time to be joining the board, but I'm sure that we will be able to all work together to do what is best for the town, its taxpayers and employees. The first item that we have on the agenda is our town administrator report that will be given to us by our interim town administrator, Bob Markle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent about 20 minutes this morning, talking with Jerry Perry, the Director of Accounts at the Department of Revenue in Boston, updating him on what has happened in terms of the failure of the override and discussing deficit legislation and the process from here. There's a handout here where I try to describe the current situation and what the options are to finish this fiscal year, which ends on June 30th. The town has two problems. We still have the budget deficit problem. We still are short $505,000 in the current year. And secondly, the public may not be aware that we have a cash flow problem. Because the town has not been able to set its tax rate for the current year, the reason for that is we haven't shown the Department of Revenue a balanced budget. We have not been able to send out tax bills. I understand they sent out 2 estimated tax bills, but third and fourth quarter have not been sent out. So the town is not getting revenue to operate. As a result of that, in January, the town sought a short-term borrowing, a note, that will come due on the 15th of this month. That was for $2.65 million. And that money has been used to pay bills and to meet payroll. We are now running out. The town accountant who was here, Matt Angel, has said to me yesterday that we have about $3 million in obligations until the end of the year, to get through the end of the year, and we have about $2 million in cash, so we're short. And he expects that we're going to run out of money on June 13th. The solution to that, obviously, is to set the tax rate, get the bills out, get revenue in the door, so we can pay off the note and pay bills. We need to set this tax rate as soon as possible. As Ken pointed out, we were hoping to do it tonight, but obviously we can't do it as long as we have a deficit. There are two choices with the budget deficit, how to deal with this deficit this year. Number one, the deficit legislation and a loan from the Commonwealth. That legislation has been prepared. It's been ready to go pending the outcome of the override. Jerry asked me to be in touch with Senator Brewer and Representative Andrews, which I have been last week. They know, they're all teed up on this. I called Brewer's office again today. They're going to introduce the deficit legislation immediately. And here are some of the considerations there. If we're going to go that route, it's going to take some time to get the bill through both houses of the legislature and be signed by the governor. I don't know how long that's going to take. I would guess several weeks or more. At which time we will get a loan, at which time the loan will balance our budget. We can set a tax rate, send out tax bills. The problem with it, if it takes two weeks or more, that's time going by when we haven't sent out the tax bills. And we need to get tax money through the door prior to June 30th. Taxpayer has a month to pay. So if you send out your tax bills in mid-May or the end of May, they have until the end of June. It really cuts it close, although it could work. The loan from the state would be a 5-year loan, and it would be for about $350,000 because, as I'm sure many of you know, the state is insisting that we cut $150,000 from existing budgets at the special town meeting on May the 17th. We're having a special inside the annual to make those cuts. So we would cut $150,000, which is already set up and ready to go. They would then give us a loan for $350,000, which we would pay back over 5 years, starting with fiscal 15, where we would have to add $80,000 plus to the budget to cover the payback of the first year of the loan. And so for 5 years, it would be an obligation of approximately $80,000 to pay back that loan, unbudgeted. So it would mean that the 2015 budget will have to make even deeper cuts in order to allow for the payback of that first installment. And lastly, the loan would be accompanied by substantial state control. I'm not using the term control board or overseer. I doubt that it would be a control board. That's what they do for larger cities like Springfield. They wouldn't send, and they sent literally a team to the city, and they sat there every day and ran the city. They won't do that here. What they'll probably do is exercise control over the phone. Any significant activity would have to be cleared if it had a financial impact. And so that's the way it would work mechanically. But nevertheless, if the state is going to provide a loan to that amount, the state is going to exercise considerable oversight and control over the town and the town's finances. I think that pretty much describes what happens if we go the deficit legislation route and the loan. Mr. Perry did say to me that the town should consider avoiding this and making the cuts now. He said it would mean eviscerating town government, but at least for 6 weeks. But he said if you make the cuts yourself, balance your budget yourself, we'll set your tax rate as soon as you show us that you've done it, and you can send out your tax bills. And he said, it's only 6 weeks. He said, you got the pain in 2015 anyway, starting July 1st. He said, I'd encourage you to consider that. And that's really what the message I want to convey to the Board of Selectmen tonight, that would be something worth considering. It would be very, very painful for the town. Because I listed some of the things that would probably happen. Matt and I were looking at the money that we have left in the budget. We've spent, what, 74% of the budget? There's about, what,
It's about $3 million in appropriation
remaining. And we'd have to carve out 505 out of that. It would mean discontinuing services for some of our major operations and cutbacks, serious cutbacks, probably furloughs. Undoubtedly, it would mean some negotiations and discussions in the case of employees that have union contracts, and layoffs. The employees who would be coming back July 1, we would encourage for furloughs. As I saw the budget that was laid out last week for 2015 by the advisory board, there are some of those cuts for 2015 that will mean permanent layoffs. And so it would be a mix of furloughs and layoffs so that the town would not be paying salaries between now and the end of the year. And very frankly, if you look at the Excel spreadsheet with budget versus actual, which I spent some time with, every department is going to be affected by this. Every department. I think that's as much as I can tell you right now. We have to make that choice. We have to make it quickly. We are proceeding on two tracks, incidentally. I said to the Senator Brewer's office today, file. So they're going to file the legislation if that's the route we choose to go. If we choose to make cuts now, we're proceeding on that track as well. We've already pretty much figured out what we need to do. I'm not here on Wednesdays, but I'm coming in tomorrow and Thursday to continue to work that process and to meet with department heads Thursday at 1 o'clock to face the reality that we have. A very unpleasant reality, but this is where the town is right now. I'm not trying to shade the situation any, but this is a kind of a grim picture that we have, and we have to face it. We have to deal with it.
As many of us, obviously, this is not our preferred route, but the voters have spoken, and we obviously are obligated to follow their will. Keep in mind, just one big issue is that when we talk about, something to keep in mind, when we talk about making cuts to next year's budget, that we need to solve this deficit, we're talking about we obviously can make those over the course of the year. When we're talking about the $505,000 that we need to cut if we don't borrow, that's $505,000 in the approximately 7 weeks that are left in the fiscal year, which is why there are such draconian and massive cuts in spending. I think, as the town administrator said, eviscerating town government is probably a pretty good adjective to use, or a verb, because that's exactly what will happen. However, the benefit of going that route, obviously, is that we do not have to make an additional $80,000 in cuts over the next 5 years. We avoid state control. And those employees that are furloughed, obviously, to help us achieve that goal will be coming back in 7 weeks. Because we have such a short time period to remedy this, the Board of Selectmen will be, we're not reorganizing tonight since Selectwoman Farrell couldn't be here. I wanted everyone to be here when we reorganize, but we will be reorganizing before we decide what to do on Thursday, so I can't speak to exactly how that vote will go. It'll be up to whoever the chairman is at that time. But I would imagine that we will be making that decision as a board on Thursday. It's not something that we can put off until next week or for 2 weeks, because every day that we wait is one day more that we continue to spend money that we don't have, that we will then have to cut in the remaining days to make up. A lot of this will also be governed. As you know, we have an interim town administrator who clearly was not here when contracts were negotiated. and entered into. So obviously, our hands will be somewhat tied based on the terms of those contracts. I know that some contracts have requirements for notification prior to layoffs, which if we obviously would make it difficult to give people 30 days notice, or whatever the notice period is, seeing as how we only have 45 days or so left in the fiscal year to make those cuts. So we will have to look into whether it is even possible to fully cut the $505,000 in the next 7 weeks. I know that you all have the sheet, but just to make you aware of the cuts that were suggested to us to close for the next 6 to 7 weeks would be closing the library, closing the Council on Aging, and then also cutting staff as much as we can, as union contracts allow, both in the town hall and then also for public safety. So that would also mean police and fire EMS cuts. Those cuts would not be permanent. A lot of those cuts, let me rephrase that, would not be permanent. So we would not be permanently closing the Council on Aging or permanently closing the library. These would be cuts that would need to take effect so that we can, over the course of the next 6 to 7 weeks, save that money. So I know that we are looking at various options to try to do that, and that Bob is taking care of that, and that we will be making that decision on Thursday. I know that there are obviously a lot of department heads and town employees that are present here, and as I said, I won't be calling for a vote tonight because we need time to look at our options and for everyone to kind of let things set in and see what we're going to do. But I'm more than happy, obviously, to listen to any department heads or town employees or citizens that would like to speak on this issue. And also, if anyone has any ideas, obviously, the advisory board has proposed their budget that was discussed last week. So we know what the cuts that we're looking at that will be suggested by the advisory board. If anyone, department heads, have suggestions as to cuts that maybe that you don't think that we will be able to see as a board of selectmen or town administrator, or maybe after looking at the advisory board budget, again, not just, I understand that all of the cuts are bad and that there are reasons why we should not make the cuts to any department that we are making. But if there are any suggestions as to where we can make those cuts in a less painful manner, with fewer layoffs, please feel free. I encourage you to send an email to Holly. You can send an email to any of the selectmen. We can forward them on to Bob, so that we can, Bob will have those to look at and to be able to see if there are any suggestions or options as to if there's anything that we are, obviously we're doing everything that we can to make the cuts as least painful as possible, but they will be painful no matter what. But if there's anything that we can do to make that process any easier, we would obviously be open to hearing that. So at this time, if there are any comments or concerns that people have, I would be happy to. Yes.
Try to stay to the point, not get too emotional, because for your town workers, this is our reality show. We've been subsidizing the budget for the past 3 years through our cut in hours, no steps. And what's gonna happen is you have workers that are in bargaining units and workers that aren't in bargaining units. So what that does is those that aren't in bargaining units, where we have no protection. And because you're under the gun, I don't know, we're out. Because you have this time frame with your bargaining units by contract, and that's why you have bargaining units. So we're really up paddle with no creek and low water and all that. On Thursday, there's going to be an attempt by us to maybe put some planning going forward, because the FinCom budget, there's no planning to it. It's just get rid of building department, get rid of board of health, get rid of cemetery, get rid of this, jack up this department, jack up this department. There's no planning, there's no ramifications, there's nothing. Because again, we're not involved in that process. We hope to at least bring some discussion to, how can we make this work from the ashes. I don't know. But our reality is, you're saying this is painful, that's one of your comments. This is really painful for us and our families, and for those of us that, this is our careers. And then those of us that are older and still working or trying to work, it's even more painful. So you're either gonna get a combination of forced retirements earlier than you would want, because that's an option. You're gonna get anyone that can bail, anyone good that has an opportunity to bail, they have to. And it's no way around saying how sad I feel, how much, your workers are the ones that have kept this town together for the past 3 years. We're the ones that have been doing more with less, with smiles on our faces and trying to put the cord together. And now, you're gonna lose, because we have no choice, really good people, and those that are gonna be left are gonna be struggling. And, again, I'm totally overwhelmed right now. And as you can see, those of us that are here, we're totally overwhelmed. There's no planning for this. There's gonna be some unemployment you're gonna have to factor in, whether you're doing furloughs or layoffs. I don't know where that's coming from. There's gonna be some health benefits that you're gonna have to calculate in. I don't know where that's coming from. So, Thursday, I don't know what we can come up with. We're gonna sure give it a shot. We'll have an opportunity to actually voice some opinions going forward, but I don't know what the future's gonna bring. Over the weekend, I said to myself, it's really, I was really upset. But then on Friday, I said, my life is my life. My job is my job that allows me to live my life. Somehow, I don't know how, we're gonna get through this personally on one-on-one level. I just don't know how. So it's gonna be really, really, really hard for us. And, we live here. We've been in this area, most of us, all our lives. So if people, I get votes, I get all that, although I will say my comment, again, I live in Royalston, can't vote in town. I think there was a lot of misinformation, and that's too bad, because I think 100 people difference in a vote, somehow without the misinformation, I think it would be different. And again, would it be better? Not necessarily, but at least we have something to work with. The words that are in here, eviscerate, that's not a good word. That's a word you use when you butcher animals. Well, that's what's happening to us. We're being butchered. Eviscerate. Permanent layoffs. Permanent. Like the marker. And, the state says, well, if you can make $505,000 cuts now, then you won't have to borrow the money. We've been saying this since the beginning of the year. Those that, as department heads, the one thing Bob Markle has brought to us as department heads is at least a voice. That we have an opportunity, he feeds back information to us, and we're able to give him information back. Because we're a think tank. If you really want to think about it, we're your paid professional think tank. And if we're not involved in the budget process, I don't know. I've never worked for a town where the green sheet is secret. And then it's presented at a meeting, and you can't even talk about it. My first FinCom meeting back 3 years ago, I had a draft green sheet. And then, beginning of the meeting, what are you doing with that green sheet? Oh, it's a draft. I've got a copy. Well, you're not supposed to have it. well, why am I here? We need to move forward with leadership. I see that in the board, in the changes recently. That's a good movement, but it takes time and planning. Planning, what people say, you want to run a business, you should run like a business, you should run like the private sector. But what's the one thing the private sector does? Plan. You know, it's not the plan necessarily, it's the planning. Because then you have some flexibility, you have some options, involve the people that have to actually do your work, and then in the end, you actually might get something. Then, you know, okay, we got a plan B, but, you know, I remember the chief, that's one of the things, where's plan B? Well, now we have plan B, and we have what? 2 days to implement it, and then a town meeting in 2 weeks, next weekend, on a Saturday, when you're having a townwide yard sale, to figure it out. And then, you got 45 days to implement it, but you can't do that, because you have those of you in bargaining units. So those of us without bargaining units, what's the lesson here, right? When it comes around to sign union cards again, think about this moment right now, because we're out of here. That's the only thing I can see. And I'm sorry, because I really like our work. I like people I work with. And that's ultimately, that's the saddest part. I think I'm done now.
Yes, sir.
I understand the layoff. Can you give me you guys' definition of a furlough?
The furlough would be basically, in essence, a temporary layoff between now and July 1st without pay. I mean,
Still subject to unemployment though,
right.
and benefits.
Yeah, and that's part of our calculation, basically, for every 3 people you say that we lay off, we have to lay off a 4th person to cover the unemployment of the 3 people that we laid off. So it's, so the furlough would be, right, no work or pay until July 1st.
So how come you just don't call it a layoff then, instead of a furlough?
Well, because the layoff is permanent, so those people will not be coming back, they're laid off. So some people will be permanently laid off and will not be returning on July 1st.
Quickly fired.
Oh, I was just wondering, because I know like the feds, when they have a furlough, you gotta go to work. You don't get paid.
Oh, yeah, no, it's not that kind of,
So that's why I was asking.
yeah, no, not that kind of furlough. Yes.
I realize what you have to do is very difficult, and I do want to make you aware of the library piece. If a public library is closed for any reason other than construction or an act of God, it loses its certification immediately. I can give you a copy of the law, and that certification can't be regained until that library is in compliance for an entire year, fiscal year, which would mean that as of whatever day, if you choose to close the library, Templeton's residents will not be able to use their library cards at any other library in the state to borrow materials. I'll give you a copy of it. And just as an aside, from the public that's been coming into the library prior to this vote, I realize that the state intervention is not ideal, but I feel like for many people who were voting on the Prop 2.5 override, that was favorable to them. If they were voting against the override, they were in favor of the state intervening. So I'm wondering what their feelings are going to be if we don't choose that route. If we choose to cut the 505 without state intervention, are they going to feel like they were duped again, where all these services are eviscerated, and they weren't aware that that was going to happen? They thought the state was going to step in and run the town. That's just my feeling on hearing these 2 choices. I know neither is ideal, but.
Yes.
But the 505 that we borrowed from the state is only going to fix this year. Next year, next fiscal year, we're still going to be short the 505.
Plus the additional 80.
Plus, yeah, so
But
we're
they're
still
not.
going to have to make these huge cuts.
But they're not going to allow you to borrow the 505. They are insisting that the town reduce the spending by $150,000. So they will only allow you to borrow $350, and again, that's an additional $80,000 for 5 years.
But we're still going to have.
Yes, and we will still have, yep.
Yeah, 250, 2015, we'll still have this
Yes.
fundamental, so we're not gaining anything.
And there will still be, right, there will still be closures, a removal of some services and staff, no matter what we choose going
Right.
forward, because we
Right.
have to make the cuts. The other option was the override, that was not successful. The only thing, and I'm not even taking this, it's something that we could consider, that if the people in town saw that we were not just kind of making this up as a scare tactic, and this is what's going to be cut, and they live with the cuts for, well, I mean, which is obviously for the good employees that we lose, that doesn't help them, because they'll already be off to other things, but then if the town sees the services that they are losing, next time that there is an override to maybe regain at least some of the services, if not the people, some of the services, then they may take that into consideration when voting. Yes? Mr.
Years
Casper?
back, we changed the school budget at the town meeting. Why can't you change that school budget right now at town meeting and get some money back out of that budget and make her responsible for what all the stuff that she's got there?
The
We
school.
did it before. The only way you can do it is at town meeting.
Right.
And then
If
somebody
we-
step up to do that, the bat.
If we
How
had
much
handled
extra
this
she's got
problem, if we had handled this problem when we should have in January, that would have been an option. But because we
Yeah, January.
did not do that,
Yeah.
by the time we get to the town meeting to even put cuts to, their budget's already been approved, and state law dictates once the budget's been approved, there's
You
not
can do it at
time
town
to.
meeting. You
Sorry?
can do it at town meeting, cut her budget.
Wait, the
That's what I'm
problem
saying.
is that there'll only be 5 weeks left in the fiscal year. So any money that they get, they've spent their money too. If this problem had been dealt with back in January, those kinds of things would be an option. I know that going forward, that obviously we will be looking at our contribution to the school moving forward, because we don't have any money, clearly. So I know that we'll be voting on their budget for next year at the annual town meeting, not for the budget that has already passed and they've already spent the money. But that obviously will come into play, and that will come into play with or without state intervention. Yes?
Maybe this is dumb, but do you have a plan? I mean, do you have I know you're saying you have a draft up there. Do you have a draft of what individual is going to be furloughed and which one will be laid off? I really would like to know, instead of 2 days from now, you don't have much time in 2 days to come up with how you're gonna come up with the 500. I mean, does somebody have some kind of an idea? Because this is what we've been
Right.
dealing with for 5 months.
Right.
Nobody has a clue. So how many from highway? How many from building right now are gonna go? How many from library? You're saying close the library? Library counts on aging and,
Streetlights were another thing
you
that
know,
were
that's
suggested
not gonna
to
come up to
us.
500,000. So how many more are you talking, and what departments are you closing permanently for 6 weeks?
Because frankly,
This is really getting old.
Right.
I mean,
No, I completely agree. Part of the problem that we face right now is that kind of which is what, again, I mean, I don't need to beat a dead horse, but people voted the way they voted. We told people that state intervention would not be good, because basically we are completely at their whim. So if our town administrator gets a call from DOR tomorrow that says, oh, we changed our mind, you have to borrow this amount now, we can't have a plan and tell people, this is who's getting laid off, this is who's getting laid off, because it changes day to day based on the information we get from DOR.
I mean, we assumed it was not gonna pass. I think the bulk of us figured it was not gonna pass, and nobody had come up with what we were gonna do, and I'm just saying that right now, you must have, it's only 2 days away till Thursday.
Right.
Somebody between Bob and Matt must have been looking at, okay, we're gonna have to close this office completely for 1 week, maybe for 2 weeks. What is the draft? What is the idea?
And I'll let Bob speak to that, and then I'll comment.
By probably midday tomorrow, it'll be completed. I mean, we know what we have to do. It's always a dilemma. I mean, if I had put out a statement, or if the board had put out a statement saying we're going to close the library, COA, and we're going to hit public safety and everything, some people would say, you're trying to scare us. So we deliberately haven't said, we've said the cuts will be unpopular, but releasing a plan like that would be considered by many to be threatening to them. And so we deliberately didn't do that.
well, I think her point is, We wanna know.
Now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we've
Instead
been
of
in
2 days
limbo.
from now,
Right.
what is, you just said you kind of have a plan, I can see not letting it out to the public, but like right now, what is the plan? Because on Thursday, you've got to make a decision that you're gonna, you know, yes or no on this, and it might be, maybe people don't think it's a good plan or something, maybe you're gonna have to work on it for 2 days, but what is the draft as of now?
There is a spreadsheet that sits in my computer that basically gets the town where it needs to go. And we will make that very public and make it available in plenty of time for people to comment on Thursday.
But the assumption is that if the path that is chosen is to avoid state intervention, it will basically mean all non-essential personnel that we can lay off likely will be. I mean, I think that's a
That's
safe
right,
assumption.
it's a fair assumption. And the other
Right.
thing is,
So if, and that includes even some essential personnel, so ambulance and police, that not all, the cuts won't be as drastic there, but there will be, every department will have cuts, and if you are not in a public safety, like a directly public safety, obviously Board of Health is public safety, but like in a people call you today because they're dying kind of situation, you can assume that if your contract or lack thereof permits you to be laid off, you likely will be, or furloughed.
and the other factor that I think is very important is that I agreed a week ago that there would be a meeting on Thursday at 1 o'clock with all department heads to go through in detail what would seem to be necessary and to give department heads an opportunity to second guess that. And I'm just going to say, here's the bottom line that we have to meet. If there are departments that have ideas that would spare people and services, absolutely open. Nothing is in
Right,
stone.
but that was for the FY15 budget, to discuss how to
Correct.
redo the advisory board's
Correct.
recommendations.
But it's very, by the way, 15 and 14 are very similar. We have a $505,000 hole
Well, I
in
know,
both.
but we've got
Yeah.
only 6 weeks, we've got 45 days to come up with 500, I understand that. Where the other one, we've got some time to play with.
And I completely, and I obviously do not understand your frustration because it doesn't impact my life the same way that it impacts yours, but I intellectually completely understand your outrage and frustration and disgust that this problem we are dealing with now, when it could have very easily been dealt with, not easily dealt with, well, easily compared to this, could have been dealt with in February or January. And so I am in no way defending the actions of this board, saying that what the board did to wait until now to try to do this was a good thing. I am in no way defending that whatsoever because it wasn't. I'm speaking for me personally, not the board, but it was not. And we should have been doing this and months ago. But knowing that there are going to be politically unpopular decisions and painful decisions, again, not as painful as this, the will of the majority of the board was to not move forward. So we didn't.
You know,
So,
we've all been very patient. We've been in limbo for a long time. And you're gonna have to forgive us, you know, we're down to the wire and our patience are gone.
oh no, I completely. That's why I'm saying you voice your frustration. This is an opportunity. I'm not trying to, because I don't have answers in terms of that is the result if we choose not to take the loan. It will be massive layoffs of more people than not will be laid off.
And what choice do you have, really?
Right.
You know, I mean, as ugly as it is, if you can avoid the state intervention, why would you choose to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, the other thing is, just to make sure everyone understands, of equal concern is default. We cannot run out of money in June and default on various payments and obligations that we have.
Yes.
I have 2 questions about both departments that I oversee. And I'm asking the board, we're in the midst of street sweeping, cleaning the town up. I want to ask the board that first question. Would the board like to see that suspended immediately, not to expend any more money doing so? And also the springtime-related activities that we perform, usually, and that would be painting of the crosswalks, expensive, painting of the center lines, expensive.
Coal patching, very expensive. I'm asking the board for some direction, because if we continue to go out there and do all these services and start expending money, now just today alone, we went and picked up another 10-wheeler load of coal patch because we got potholes out there everywhere. We couldn't buy it last week, they didn't have it made, so we had to wait. Today we picked it up, so we have some of that in stock to use up. However, and I can easily lose, 18 ton of coal patch in 3 days, and then it's gone. So, very expensive. The other side of that is, and these are all the functions that we normally do. We haven't started our catch basin cleaning. Does the board want to suspend these type of activities that's costing, it's costing fuel, running this equipment. And the other side of the note is machinery repairs, or should I say town fleet repairs. We're spending, this old equipment's breaking down as we use it, and some days we go days without it breaking down, and other days we do. Right now, our excavator's torn apart in the garage. It's a 1989. We've had to go through and replace almost every hydraulic hose on it. Very expensive. He's right in the mix of doing it right now. He's probably 80% done, finding more hoses that are just old and rotten, ready to blow. So we were changing them all out to get ready for the construction season. So these are questions. Do we start parking equipment, stop repairing it, and save the machinery maintenance so that money can be turned back? Stop all activities in the highway department to turn back that budget?
I agree. Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we suspend services because that will save the need to do additional layoffs.
And here's one thing too that I'll point out, and obviously everyone else can speak to this on the board. Taking a formal vote of the board to accomplish that, I would be hesitant to do because it wasn't posted as that kind of action taking place. However, obviously we have a town administrator now that has the full authority to direct department heads and activities. So obviously if any members of the board have opinions that they would like the town administrator to hear on that matter. I think that obviously, right, anything that we can do, as the town administrator said, to save money, it's 48 hours basically until we have made a decision, so over the next 2 days. Yeah, sure.
I think that you are the department heads, you are the paid professionals. You should be able to make that decision knowing that we're already in this. But if you suspend all those operations, what will your people be doing?
That was going to be my follow-up question.
I mean, would they just be standing there? Because that's really not right either. So it's a matter of, but I'm only asking that question, but I think that anybody here knows like what they could or could not do. Don't spend any money and don't, to speak to your, any of you. Since I've been on the board, I know that we've discussed like trying to, what is a plan B? What is this? What is that? I feel like, we haven't done that. We haven't done that at all. I'm disappointed in myself that I go to a joint advisory board and board of selectmen meeting and I'm just seeing a budget for the first time since I've been on the board. That was horrifying to me, to be honest with you. And for you all to hear it that way, oh my God, is that normally how that happens? That'll never happen again, not on my watch. And I'm only speaking for me, I cannot speak for everybody else. That was really sad and that shouldn't happen. Again, you answer to the elected officials and not the appointed. But it's a matter of, we should trust you to make decisions. You know what can or cannot be spent, and I say that you should do some stuff like right now.
But you're elected by the people to do the budget. And you said the other day in that department head meeting that it was pushed off over to the advisory board.
Yes, apparently it was.
Yeah.
But the people voted you, and
I
that was one
understand
of
that.
the jobs for each one
I
of you to
completely
do the
agree with
budget.
that, and that is what I've been trying to say. So for FY15,
To tell him that he's the department head, that he needs to make a decision, he doesn't know what Plan B is, how much you're cutting from other things to say that he can't do the line painting, which is $15,000. Maybe you've got enough money from all the cuts that you're taking from everywhere else.
Maybe.
You don't know that.
right, maybe we would. But again, I remember being at the last department head meeting, I just like to hear you. but it's a matter of that you wanted to speak to the situation, you guys wanted to get together, you wanted to say, what about this, what about that, which I think is a great idea. You guys should have been having department head meetings all along. I didn't know that that didn't happen. So I'm happy that you all do that, because who better than what you said, a think tank, than to do that kind of stuff and to come together as a collective and collaborative unit to say, well, you don't need this. And I remember Bethany coming to one of the first department head meetings I went to and bringing a whole bunch of supplies and saying, here you go. That's what you should be doing. So it's a matter of, you know, I would think, Bob, that if it's a couple of days, don't do that. You know, don't do the things that you're suggesting. Luann's only one person. Carol Harris is only one person. I mean, what do they do? Not open the office? Or there must be other things, and then we have to really, I can't even, I've been looking at both budgets, but now the override didn't pass, so you have to kind of wrap your hands around, oh my God, I can say I've never been through this before. This is scary.
Well, this
You know what I'm
is-
saying?
This is the
Scary.
tough decision for
Absolutely
my
it is.
department.
Right.
Because if I suspend doing cleanup and our normal springtime activities, which are expensive, again, the follow-up was my crew. I've got 8 people
Right.
with a mechanic working on stuff. Do I stop the mechanic? I'm asking because, this is the first time we're all hearing this
Vote on
tonight.
that,
So it's
though.
like, I'm looking for direction. I don't want to spend
Right.
what we shouldn't spend right now.
At this point, I think that I would rather see some guys stand around and not spend $15,000 to change the crosswalks. I think, because again, it's only 48 hours. If we're talking about 2 weeks instead of 2 days, that would be a different story. I'm not saying halt everything, but anything that's gonna involve the expenditure of thousands of dollars to accomplish, I'm not directing you because I don't have that authority, Bob does.
Well-
But that, I would think that that would be a good thing to do.
It's just questions, because I don't wanna get phone calls off the wall that we got potholes all over town and we're not filling them. And if we use up the last 18 tons we just picked up, and that can disappear in one day
Right.
if there's enough potholes out there, trust me. If we use up our reserve now, we won't have anything for huge potholes if they show up. Question, I don't know.
What are you gonna say?
Sorry,
First
Jeff.
Okay, thanks.
I was just gonna say, I don't think you want the guys standing around twiddling their thumbs, so you gotta do the activities that are gonna cost us the least.
Right.
If you've already got the mechanic in process and he's already got the supplies, then let him continue. If he's still gotta buy supplies, that's a different story. Sweeping, if you can sweep and that's a lower cost than filling potholes, then sweep, it's.
That machine right now, just to point out, that machine right now is down, it can't be used. If we have an emergency and we need that machine, we won't have one, it's the only one we've got. So my opinion is that needs to get fixed and parked, not used, let's not wear it out anymore, unless we absolutely have to put it out on the road.
And I would, sorry. I just wanted to address one of the issues with the budget, because I, again, agree with you on that. The Finance Committee Advisory Board Handbook is quite clear that the Board of Selectmen is supposed to start in October putting together the budget. That hasn't happened for years. 2 years. At least 2 years, because that's as long as I've been around. At least 2 years. So the advisory board has stepped up, luckily, to do that, because otherwise it wouldn't have been done.
Well, maybe we could have done it.
Oh, I know, right. Speaking personally, oftentimes we are worried about budgets that we don't have control over, like light and water and the school commit, like budgets that we're not in charge of. We spend a lot of time worrying about those while we then push on to the advisory board doing the actual town's budget. So I'm in no way trying to crucify the advisory board and say they wrestled it from our hands. They didn't take anything from our hands. It was willingly given to them. So they did the best that they likely could with kind of the information and what they had. So. But no, I completely agree with you, and we've had numerous discussions, both the advisory board and myself, and we discussed this at the joint meeting, that this year, that process will be started on time as it's supposed to, under the state calendar, and it will be started in October, so you'll be getting emails from all of us. We will have a town administrator, so that if there are department heads or departments that don't submit budgets on time, there'll be someone to actually hold those individuals accountable, so we can get the budgets put together, and that is something that is not being brushed off. Trust me, that we know that needs to be taken care of. And again, if that process had begun, it's like a chain of dominoes. That wasn't done, so then this wasn't done, and that wasn't done, and then here we sit on May 6th with impending doom.
Can I just ask one
Yeah, sure.
question to Mr. Markle?
Sure.
Chapter 90
Yes.
If the state takes us over, do we still get our state Chapter 90 money?
Yes,
We do?
yes.
Okay.
Chapter
So I
90.
was starting the process of going out to bid for items, and then we were like, we didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
If the state holds that
Chapter
against
90
us.
would not be affected at all because it's an entirely separate allocation by the state from a bond package that they issue. Let me just say this, that there is a new process for the budget, which will start this fall, as Ken said. And it's in the bylaws now that your town administrator will initiate the process in the fall by estimating revenue and doing a professional estimate of the revenue. And then request each department to do a spreadsheet for their budget. Then conduct meetings with individual department heads to discuss the budget request, and then come up with a budget, I should say a draft budget that is recommended to the Board of Selectmen. They will then get the budget in late fall, and they will spend time with it and presumably interview department heads and make decisions whether to change up or down the recommendations of the town administrator. And once they have completed their work, they vote on the budget, and then you have the budget of the selectmen that goes then to the advisory board, and they go through a similar process of review, and then they recommend to the town meeting. And if they recommend something different than the selectmen have recommended, you fight that out on the town meeting floor. And that's a standard budget process, now enshrined in the bylaws of the town, and it will begin this fall.
Yes.
If we borrowed the money from the state, which is what we have assumed was going to happen if the override failed, how does that affect the tax rate? Is it a debt exclusion? Can it be added in there?
The
On the tax rate?
payback, the installment payback of that loan over 5 years would have to be in the operating budget itself. It would not be a debt exclusion, and it would not be an override.
So we can't increase the taxes to cover the payment?
No, it would have to fit inside the operating budget, which means more
Additional
squeezing of the operating departments in order to carve out an additional $80,000 from within the revenue limits.
So would that mean next year our budget would be short $585,000?
Right, based on we would need to, from the budget that has already been presented, that cuts, and the budget cuts more than 505 because there are other increases. Just like every year, things have increased more than 2.5%, so there are other decreases in this budget other than just 505. So the several $100,000, more than 505, would then have to be cut also. So we don't avoid that problem either way. That the loan from the state only solves our problem that exists over the next 7 weeks. It does not solve the problem that exists for next year. So that's again why taking on, as was said earlier, taking on a debt that's going to take $80,000, which we have to cover under the levy limit for the next 5 years, to solve a 6-week problem. I mean, it turns a 6-week problem into a 5-year problem on top of the 5-year problem or the eternal problem that we already have until we make the permanent cuts. So, yes.
I guess I'm speaking for department heads and employees. It's mostly our concern is the uncertainty. I mean, this has not been going on since February, January. This goes way back to November, December, when everything hit the fan.
Right.
I mean, and then we were told we went to town meeting. Town meeting voted for us to do the override. We went and did the override, and we were pretty much under the assumption you had Plan A or Plan B. Plan A failed because they said no. So Plan B, in my eyes, and probably most of ours, we were going into state receivership, or the state was coming in and stepping in. And all of a sudden, we walk in our offices today, and we're told, well, that might not be the case. Now we're going to be doing these big cuts to the budgets from now to the end of June, and then come July, we're going to even have more bigger cuts. And it's just the uncertainty. My phone's ringing off the hook, and do you know how stupid it sounds in your office when you say, I don't know what the tax rate is. I don't know when the tax rate's going to be set. Yes, the state is going to be stepping in because legislation is being filed. And now you come here tonight and we're saying, okay, maybe it's not going to be filed. maybe we're gonna be cutting people. You know, when your employees and your department heads can't tell the public, which you're the forefront of for your town, what's going on. And 2 days to you might not be nothing, but 2 days for us, I can tell you, I'm sitting in my office pushing my work out, and I have to check it 2 and 3 times because your mind's going 40 different ways, because we don't know what's going on. And 2 days for me is like eternity.
Well, and there are a lot of moving parts here. One of the factors that we now have to face that we didn't quite know was as severe is the whole business of cash flow. That issue popped up less than 2 weeks ago.
We've been saying it though.
Yeah.
She predicted this.
I've been asked by people sitting here, what about the cash flow? And we kept saying, cash flow is not coming in.
Right.
I mean, we should have pushed in the papers. People, please pay estimated tax bills. Did that ever even go in the news? I've had people in the last 2 weeks, you can pay an estimated bill. Oh, really, I can? I've had lawyers calling me today because banks are sending people back their escrows. People are getting checks in the mail and think life is great. I just got $100,000 back from my bank because I don't owe any taxes. It's like, don't cash those checks. Put them in your accounts. That money is gonna be coming back at you in a couple weeks. You know, and it's just, you know, lawyers don't even know what to do with the town right now. And it should have been pushed back and it should have been publicized. Yes, we will take estimated payments. Nothing was ever encouraging people to do that, because honestly, I think if you would have put it out in the paper, because when I tell people, by all means, pay an estimated, they'll go down and pay it. You know, and you're gonna get in a situation now, cash flow is gonna be out of the air because everybody's spent it. It's gone.
Even as you get the tax bills out.
Was there any other, yes?
Is there any way we can send out some tax bills right
No.
away?
No, we
Without
can't.
tax
I have
rate.
to send out actual bills now before my preliminaries go out July 1st. So if you don't get a tax rate before July 1st, you're not gonna get preliminaries now.
Oh, right.
Your actuals have to go out and close out the year. So, no, there's nothing.
Yes.
I don't know if Bud's still here. The question I had was through you. You asked about sweeping, but what does it cost a day? Does anybody know what it costs a day to run 5 pieces of equipment sweeping, or what you'd actually save by stopping, or?
We don't, I mean, that would, but that would be.
Well, I just had a load of diesel
Oh, sorry.
delivered. All that pieces of equipment takes a lot of fuel. That's $4,000 for diesel.
Yeah.
1,000 gallons I had delivered last week, and they're going through it quickly with all that piece of equipment moving around. They're loading up sand for the winter time, back and forth. That's a lot of equipment moving around that only gets, what, 7 to 10 miles an hour, or miles a gallon? So, yes, it costs us money.
Is there anything that any of the board members would like to say?
Sorry, I didn't read.
How much does it cost for us to do a sanding operation right now to clean up the sand?
Sweeping, like a day if you stop. Like if you got 5 pieces of equipment running, you ask, you know, should I stop now, stop in a week? What, any idea what it would, you know, what it costs a day to do it? I mean,
I
run
said
the
right now, I
equipment?
just ordered the diesel, I just had diesel
I need a few
delivered.
minutes to try to calculate that in my head, what we're spending in fuel a day. We're probably burning somewhere between 100 and 150 gallons of fuel a day for the pieces that I'm using.
And then I mentioned you're hauling winter sand, that's the same thing, you're going through diesel now.
Yeah, on those past rainy days, you know, to keep the crew busy, we started replenishing our stockpile at the highway barn from our pit. You know, we do that on days that we can't sweep, you know, keeping the crew busy. This is what I was asking about, and I'll be happy to sit with Bob. Bob wants to sit with me about some future projects here of what I'm gonna do. I know you said something about, we got Chapter 90, our new allotment's gonna be coming shortly. We don't know what that number is. We have $500,000 in our Chapter 90 bank account right now. I presented 11 roads to the board. I believe we were planning on talking about it on May 12th. Again, to prep those roads and whatnot, that's fuel. It's all fuel, not much in materials for prepping them, but it's fuel and labor.
Yes.
You know, I was thinking, and maybe this may be way off the wall. Years ago, I remember when Athol had problems and they had to cut back on hours, they worked with the unemployment so that they got part pay and part unemployment, so they ended up with more of a paycheck. If we could get straightened out, if you put a call out and ask people to pay in an estimated amount for their taxes, we'd have some money to work with. And it would be worth a shot to find out if unemployment would work with us so that we could keep more people on. You know, it's nothing ventured, nothing gained.
And we will know more by Thursday, once Bob has had an opportunity to see how much. Really, we still have to make a determination as to that kind of avoiding state intervention is even possible with doing everything that we want to do. Is there anything, any of the board members or Bob or anything before we? Yes.
When do you plan to make this decision?
It'll be Thursday, and we're in the Kiva on Thursday.
Thursday night?
Yes, we have is it 5:45 the interview? So we have, 5:45 is the interview for the new town administrator, which was already a posted meeting. We're moving that to the Kiva, and then immediately following that interview will be the board's reorganization.